Our discussion is all about the categories of historical data, primary sources, and secondary sources. What is history? History, from historia, meaning inquiry knowledge acquired by investigation, is the study of the past events before the invention of writing systems are considered prehistory. History is an umbrella term comprising past events as well as memory, discovery, collection, organization, presentation, and interpretation of these events. Historians seek knowledge of the past using historical sources such as written documents, oral accounts, art and material artifacts, and ecological markers. We can relate it to when we were children. It is a part of our past that now we are grown ups. Those who have managed to keep their names in print and on numerous social media platforms are part of history. They are not of this present, yet they are the reason that we can refer to things from the past as history. We cannot ignore major historical events because they are part of our history and cannot be erased or changed. As a result, we can conclude that there are historical materials that will assist us in determining whether the resources we obtained are primary or secondary.
How do historians investigate the past? Historians do not usually involve in the event that they are investigating, hence, they rely mainly on the evidence, such as records, that survive through times to reconstruct the past. In doing this, historians have to verify sources, date them, locate their place of origin, and identify their intended functions. This process is called historical method. Historians investigate the past and rely on the evidence such as records, and through that records, and reconstruct the past. Also, historians have to verify sources for them to have an accurate information while they study or investigate a certain events and history. Historical sources. Historical sources are, at their most basic level, something that tells us about history. It may be a document, a picture, a sound recording, a book, a cinema film, a television program, or an object. Any sort of artifact from the period in question that conveys information can qualify as a source.
Hi everyone, I'm one of the presenter. So, historical sources classified into two, the primary sources and the secondary sources. So, my topic is all about one of the categories of historical data, which is the primary sources. What is primary sources? Primary sources is something that originates from the past, a first-hand or contemporary account of an event or topic. They are the most direct evidence of a time or event because they were created by people or things that were there at the time or event. These sources have not been modified by interpretation and offer original thought or new information. So, primary sources is a first-hand information wherein a person is participated in the actual event being studied, and this is not been modified by interpretation. Instead, it's offer original thought or new information. Primary sources can be also a form of oral histories, wherein a person tells or narrates his or her personal experiences in their earlier life. Here are some examples of primary sources. So first is diaries. A diary is a record or originally in handwritten format with discrete entries arranged by date reporting on what has happened over the course of a day or other period. That's why diary is primary sources because it's created as a time or event is occurring. Next example is newspaper. It is a publication printed on a paper and issued regularly, usually once a day or once a week. It gives information and opinions about current events and news. Newspaper articles. It is written about a specific event immediately after its occurrence can be viewed as primary sources. For example of newspaper is La Solidaridad. The primary sources on the story of the La Solidaridad were surprisingly rare in the Philippines until recently, but its history could be followed through the letters of its staff and contributors. Next example is manuscripts. It is a book, document, or piece of music written by hand rather than typed or printed. That's why manuscript is primary sources because it use contain first-hand information. Photographs. Why are photographs useful primary sources? Photographs present a visual record of moment in time. This can enhance our understanding of events and moments by giving us a sense of what they look like. Last example is government documents. They include parliamentary publications, legislation, policy documents, discussion documents, and statistics and reports. What is the value of primary sources? Primary sources are what remain from the past. Aside from human memory and the unrecorded passing down of information from generation to generation, histories based upon primary sources are really the only way the current generation can hope to understand what happened before. Those who are not professional historians have the option of relying on others to find this evidence from the past and interpret it. But many people find it more fun and interesting to have direct contact with the historical records themselves because they value learning about historical events and the words and images of the direct participants. So primary sources is the only way for new or current generation to understand what happened in the past. And also, it's the only hope for the historians and researchers to move forward acquired knowledge from the past to construct better society where every people acknowledge history. And also, we study world history because what happened to a society affects what will happen today and in the future. History is more than just studying what happened in the past. When you study historical event, you also study a society's culture, religion, politics, and economics. Historians look for causes and effects that help to explain how and why events happen. They try to see the past through the eyes of the people who live it.
Hi everyone, I'm one of the presenter, and my topic is all about one of the categories of historical data, which is the secondary sources. So, what is secondary sources? Secondary sources was something that was not made by someone or by a group of people who participated in the historical era, which is being studied. So, secondary sources was made by the people who doesn't participate in the historical era which is being studied. In short, that people was not there during the event. These sources of historical data which are created later or after the historical event which is being studied and provided by the people who were not present in that event. So I said while ago, these are the types of historical data which was being made by someone who doesn't participate in the actual event. Usually, secondary sources are made of interpretation, comments, analysis, evaluation, and summary of the primary sources. So that's all. Mr. Mahinay, which is one of my groupmates, will continue our discussion.
So first example here is biography. Biography wherein it is a life story written by another person. The next is textbook, wherein the author of the interprets prescribed theories of a topic. Next is interview in a newspaper as it was written already by other person, which is someone who's not participated in the actual event. Next is the movie, like historical movies. just to provide information as the director or writer of the movies were not participated in the actual event. Lastly, the scholarly journals, as it serves as review which contains opinion of the author based from the primary source. So I have already mentioned the five examples that we have here. Before I proceed to my part, let me recall the let me recall what really the secondary source is. According to the discussion of Mr. Dominic regarding the meaning of secondary source, the secondary source is the records generated by an event but written by a non-participant in the event, based on or derived from primary sources, but they've been interpreted or analyzed. In other words, secondary sources or source are created by people who are not presented during the events or reference primary source for informations. So one of the best example of this is the Revolutionary War. So Revolutionary War, or a book about the Revolutionary War, contains a different informations and from different sources, which was compiled and selected. This information was selected and compiled and put together to provide a book regarding the Revolutionary War, which is accurate to the meaning of secondary source. Wherein in secondary source we are interpreting and gathering the information from a primary source to build and create another source of information. So let's just always remember that secondary source is described or I mean derived from primary information, or it can be a primaries or summarize of summaries of primary sources. It can analyze and interpret primary sources too. What is the value of secondary source? Uh, they can save time and money, and they may provide access to historical data that cannot be produced using primary research because of the events concerned took place before the current members of the society were born. So that's the value of secondary source.
Let me introduce the reporters who exerted to finish a report. Dominic Salvador, aka Dominic, BSHM first year. Jeffty Mahinay, aka Jeffty, BSHM first year. Evia Rose Ulanday, aka Evia, BSDM second year. Hazel Queen Abis, aka Hazel Queen, BSTM first year. And lastly, Dayan Pepega, aka Dayan, BSTM first year. We hope you learned something from us. Thank you.